My daughter-in-law didn't wait until everyone left the kitchen. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't even try to mask the contempt tightening her face. She simply planted herself in front of the sink, crossed her arms, and said, "Leonard, either you start paying $800 a month, or you find somewhere else to sleep. I'm not running a boarding house." Her voice was cold, blunt, without hesitation. That was the moment my world narrowed to the size of a ceramic mug in my hand. My name is Leonard Hale. I'm 70. Widower. Retired logistics manager. Quiet man, some would say. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about my resume or my age. I was thinking about how small a person can make you feel once they decide you're useless. My son, Caleb, stood behind her near the pantry, shoulders bent, torn between speaking and staying silent, his usual state around his wife. And across the room, my grandson Mason froze mid-step, the plate in his hand tilting dangerously. His face tightened with confusion, hurt, and disbelief all at once. "Aunt," Mason started quietly, "Grandpa." "Not now, Mason," she snapped. "This is an adult conversation." He flinched. My stomach twisted. Her name is Caroline. And for 3 years, I had done everything I could to avoid conflict with her. But conflict, it seemed, no longer cared about my preferences. I set my mug down gently. "Caroline, that's unfair." "It's reality," she said coolly. "Groceries, power, water, everything's up. You don't contribute, Leonard. And we can't carry you anymore." I wanted to say, "I've covered your emergency repairs. I paid half your mortgage during the shutdown. I loaned Caleb money without ever asking for it back. I buy my own groceries, eat half your food, rarely drive anywhere, and keep to myself, you know this." Instead, I said nothing. Because sometimes silence is the only way to keep your dignity from bleeding out onto the floor. Caleb finally stepped forward, voice tight. "Maybe we can discuss this later." "No," Caroline held up her hand. "We've put this off long enough. He needs to contribute. Everyone else has to." A long breath entered my lungs and left slowly. "And if I can't?" I asked softly. She met my eyes without blinking. "Then you find somewhere else. Family or not." Mason's jaw trembled. "Grandpa's not homeless." Caroline sighed heavily, as if she were being forced into sainthood. "No one said, homeless. I'm just saying that if he won't pay, he'll need to figure something out. Shelters exist. Senior apartments exist. His situation is not our responsibility." The word responsibility hit harder than the threat. My son rubbed his forehead. "Dad, I'm sorry. She's just stressed." "Stress doesn't create cruelty," I said. "It exposes it." His eyes flickered with shame. Caroline threw her hands up. "This is ridiculous, $800 is nothing, Leonard. If you can't even manage that, then, well, you'll have to sleep somewhere." She didn't say the word. But everyone heard it. The street. Even the refrigerator hum seemed to go quiet. Mason stepped in front of me then, shoulders squared, young jaw tight. "You're not leaving," he said. "Mom can't just." "She can," I whispered, placing a hand on his shoulder. "And she has." I left the kitchen calmly. But inside, something had cracked, quietly, like a small bone deep under the skin. Not pain. Just certainty. I would not stay in this house another year. Maybe not another month. Maybe not even another week. I sat alone on the small porch swing outside, the cool autumn air settling over Riverton Ridge like a soft blanket. From inside the house came muffled voices, Caroline whispering sharply to someone on the phone, Caleb pacing, Mason moving restlessly. I should have been angry. Instead, I felt tired. Tired of being misjudged. Tired of being quiet. Tired of carrying the weight of a family that didn't see what I had already done for them. I took out my old leather wallet, slid open the inner pocket and removed a folded bank statement, one I'd picked up earlier that week. It wasn't the only account I had. But it was the simplest. A modest checking account with more than Caroline thought. A savings account with more than Caleb knew. An investment account large enough to surprise anyone who assumed I was a burden. But I didn't stare at the numbers with pride. I stared at them with sadness. I had built these resources quietly for Mason's future. College. A first home. Maybe even a business someday. And now I wasn't sure how much longer I could stay in the same house as the boy I was saving everything for. My hands shook slightly, not with fear, but with the weight of choosing whether to speak, or continue enduring. Inside, I heard Mason slam a door. I heard Caleb's voice rise in frustration. I heard Caroline's calm, dismissive replies. And somewhere in those sounds, a decision finally settled. Tonight, I will not be silent. The hall buzzed with warm chatter, folding chairs scraping, neighbors laughing, and parents preparing for the academic awards night. Mason walked beside me, hands in his pockets. "You shouldn't come," he muttered. "Mom's acting weird. She's telling people things again." "I know," I said softly. "Grandpa, you're really not leaving, right?" I held his gaze. "I will never leave you." His breath released shakily. Inside the hall, Caroline was already moving from group to group, smiling sweetly, voice lowered just enough to imply concern without revealing the full story. I caught snippets. "It's been difficult, but we're trying. Unexpected expenses. We're supporting Leonard the best we can." She wasn't shaming me loudly. She was doing something far worse. Crafting a narrative. A quiet one. A believable one. Passive-aggressive sympathy. The kind that ruins a reputation without ever pointing a single finger. Mason clenched his fists. "She's lying again." "She's protecting her image," I said. "Some people care more about appearing generous than being kind." He swallowed. "Are you going to say anything?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know I can't let her rewrite who I am." The principal finished speaking. Applause echoed. And then Caroline, of course, volunteered for a short family acknowledgement. She stepped to the microphone with the polished smile she used like armor. "We've had a challenging year," she began, voice trembling in all the right places. "Caring for family is never easy. Especially when someone depends on you completely." A sympathetic murmur rose from the audience. My breath went still. "And with our rising bills, inflation, and unexpected household strain," she continued, "we're doing our best to support Leonard while he gets back on his feet." Mason stiffened beside me. Caroline continued, her tone soft, almost saintly. "It's been hard, but family pulls together, even when it feels overwhelming." Her eyes flicked toward me. A quiet dare. A challenge cloaked in kindness. I felt the room absorbing her every word. People nodding. People assuming. People judging. And something inside me, something quiet and tired and ancient, finally rose. I stood. Slowly. Not dramatically. Not with anger. Just stood. My heart beat in my throat. My palms were damp. But my voice, when it came, was steady. "Caroline," I said softly, "you left out a part of the story." 50 heads turned. She blinked, smile faltering. "Oh. Leonard, did you want to say something?" "Yes," I said. "And I want to keep it simple." I reached into my jacket. Removed a folded envelope. Inside it was a printed statement, not the full picture, not every account, but enough to contradict the story she'd built. I walked to her calmly and placed the envelope in her hands. "For accuracy," I said. The morning after the community hall incident, the house felt unusually still. Like everyone was waiting for someone else to speak first. I walked into the kitchen expecting silence. What I didn't expect was Melissa, standing by the sink with her hair pulled into a tight bun, hands clasped neatly in front of her. The same posture she used when she wanted to look calm for outsiders. "Sam, can we talk?" Her tone was almost gentle. Almost. I didn't sit. I didn't answer. She continued, steadying her voice like someone who'd rehearsed. "About last night. I think people misunderstood what I said. I wasn't trying to paint you in a bad light. There it was. The soft apology with sharp pieces hidden inside. Not regret. Not accountability. Damage control. For what it's worth," she added, "I'm sorry if things seemed harsher than they were. Emotions were high. People heard things the wrong way." I let out a small breath. "Melissa," I said evenly, "the only misunderstanding last night was yours." Her smile faltered for a split second. Then returned, thinner. "I just think," she said carefully, "that it would be better for everyone if we present a united front right now. People talk, you know. And they're already asking me questions." There it was, the truth under the honeyed tone. She wasn't sorry for what she said. She was sorry she got caught saying it. "I'm leaving," I said. Melissa froze. Her hand tightened on the counter. "Sam, that's not necessary," she said quickly. "We can work this out. I didn't mean for things to go that far." "You meant every word," I replied. "You just didn't expect the consequences." Her lips parted, hurt, indignation, fear all tangled together. "Brandon won't want this," she tried. "He'll adjust," I said. That landed like a stone dropped into still water. Enough to ripple. Not enough to argue against. I stepped past her. She didn't move. Her apology act had nothing left to cling to. Brandon returned mid-morning, smelling like engine grease from the auto shop. He didn't shout or panic. He just stood in the hallway rubbing his forehead, the same gesture he used when he was 12 and broke his mother's favorite lamp. "Dad," he said quietly, "I heard about last night." He looked like he wanted to defend Melissa out of habit. But something in his eyes wouldn't let him. "People called me this morning," he continued. "They told me what she said. And what you showed her. A beat. Then. You helped us with the down payment, didn't you?" "Yes," I said. He exhaled shakily, leaning back against the wall. "I should have asked," he muttered. "Or at least listened. You tried to tell me things years ago, didn't you?" I nodded once. He didn't cry. Didn't break. But something in him slumped. The weight of all the moments he'd believed the wrong person. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered. "I know," I said. "But this isn't about punishment. It's about peace." Brandon nodded, eyes glossy but controlled. "If you ever need anything," he began. "I will always need one thing," I said gently. "For you to be a better man for Tyler than you've been for me." He swallowed. "I will." I believed him. Tyler wasn't in the kitchen. He wasn't in the living room. I found him on the back porch, zipping up a small duffel bag. "What's that?" I asked. He shrugged, cheeks red. "I thought, maybe I could come with you." My heart tightened. "I can't take you away from your home," I said softly. "This," he gestured vaguely toward the house. "This doesn't feel like home right now." He wasn't crying. He wasn't trembling. He was angry. But the quiet kind of angry that sits behind the eyes. I sat beside him. "You'll see me every week," I said. "More than that, if you want. And I'm still helping with your applications. That doesn't change." He nodded, jaw tight. Then, without looking at me, he pulled something from his hoodie pocket. A small, worn baseball from his first Little League game. The one I coached. "I want you to take it," he said. "So, you don't forget." I closed my hand around it. Memory hit like warmth. His crooked batting stance. His gap-toothed smile. His mother glaring at the dirt on his jeans. "I won't forget," I said. "My leaving has nothing to do with you." He breathed in sharply. "You promise?" "I promise." And because he needed it, I added, "You're the only reason I stayed this long." For the first time that morning, he broke. He leaned into me, shoulders tight, face hidden. Not sobbing. Just holding on. I held him back, feeling every year of my life settle into that moment. I didn't take much. A suitcase. 2 shirts. My work boots. The last photo I had of my wife. And the rental house key I'd picked up months earlier. Because part of me knew peace couldn't last forever. When I closed the suitcase, my hand paused on the dresser. Not for regret. Not for fear. Just a small ache for the years I had tried to make this house feel like a home. In the doorway, Melissa stood silently. Not crying. Not raging. Just watching. Trying to figure out how to spin this loss into something survivable. "Sam," she said softly. But she didn't know what to ask. And I didn't know what to give her. So I nodded once, polite but distant. The way strangers acknowledge each other in passing. Tyler followed me to the driveway. Brandon stood on the porch. No chaos. No dramatic scene. Just the heavy, honest quiet that follows truth. "You'll see me Saturday," I told Tyler. "Okay," he whispered. I put my hand on his shoulder. "Remember who you are," I said. "Not who you're told to be." He nodded hard. "I will." I believed him. I got into the car. Started the engine. And as I pulled away from the house where I had lived for 3 years but never belonged, I felt something unexpected. Not anger. Not sadness. Just relief. And relief, I learned that morning, is the first sign of freedom. The key turned harder than I expected. A stiff metallic click that echoed in my chest more than in the hallway. When the door finally swung open, the scent of old wood and still air greeted me. Not unpleasant, just untouched. The kind of quiet that notices when someone enters. For a moment, I stayed on the threshold. Part of me felt a small, surprising ache. A mix of relief that I'd finally escaped. And a soft sadness for the years I spent trying to make myself small in someone else's house. Then I stepped inside. Each footstep felt like a decision. The living room was simple, bare walls, aging carpet, a lone window letting in a tired beam of sunlight. But the space felt earned, not borrowed. On the counter sat the rental keys I'd picked up months earlier. A safety net I never admitted even to myself. I set my suitcase down. The sound echoed like acceptance. The key turned harder than I expected. A stiff metallic click that echoed in my chest more than in the hallway. When the door finally swung open, the scent of old wood and still air greeted me. Not unpleasant, just untouched. The kind of quiet that notices when someone enters. For a moment, I stayed on the threshold. Part of me felt a small, surprising ache. A mix of relief that I'd finally escaped. And a soft sadness for the years I spent trying to make myself small in someone else's house. Then I stepped inside. Each footstep felt like a decision. The living room was simple, bare walls, aging carpet, a lone window letting in a tired beam of sunlight. But the space felt earned, not borrowed. On the counter sat the rental keys I'd picked up months earlier. A safety net I never admitted even to myself. I set my suitcase down. The sound echoed like acceptance. My phone buzzed. Not a call. Not a voicemail. A carefully shaped message. Melissa. Sam, I think we should clear the air. Things got twisted last night. Can we talk privately? It would help us both. No apology. No ownership. Just the same soft pressure she always used when she wanted control disguised as peace. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then put the phone face down. Some conversations are traps dressed as reconciliation. He arrived around noon, knocking softly. The kind of knock that asks permission. When I opened the door, he looked tired. Not broken. Not fully on my side. Just, torn. "Dad," he said quietly, rubbing the back of his neck, "I wasn't sure if I should come." "You're here," I said. "That's enough." He stepped inside, eyes drifting over the bare room. "This place feels quiet," he said. A pause. "Maybe too quiet." "It's mine," I replied. He nodded slowly. As if trying to accept two truths at once. That I left. And that I had been preparing for the day I might need to. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "Melissa's upset." "Not at you." "Well, she says not at you. Mostly she's angry people think she mistreated you." "With reason," I said. He looked down, jaw tightening. "I know," he murmured. This is complicated. Not a defense. Not an excuse. Just honesty he'd been avoiding. "We'll figure things out," I said. But this wasn't working anymore. He nodded once, squeezed my shoulder, and left. The door didn't slam. It closed carefully, like even he didn't want to disturb the balance of the room. Late afternoon, a text from Mrs. Cole appeared. "Saw Melissa at the store. She's trying to explain you moving out. People aren't buying it." I didn't smile. But I did breathe easier. Truth has a way of traveling on its own. He called just before sunset. His voice wasn't trembling this time. It was steady. "Older. Grandpa. Mom's been pacing all day. She keeps saying everything's misinterpreted." I didn't respond. He didn't need me to. I just wanted to say, "I'm proud of you for leaving." That landed deeper than anything Melissa said last night. "And Grandpa," he added, lowering his voice. "I packed something for Saturday. Something you should have." "What is it?" "You'll see." A small spark of excitement, real excitement, colored his voice. When the line went quiet, the house didn't feel empty. It felt ready. I placed my few belongings on the counter. Then, in the fading light, I pulled out an old photo of my wife. Creased edges, soft smile, eyes that never judged. I set it on the windowsill. For the first time since she passed, I whispered, "I'm trying." The house didn't answer. It didn't need to. I exhaled, long, slow, honest. Leaving that house wasn't losing my home. It was reclaiming it. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, the world would start learning what reclaiming really meant. The next morning began with the quiet hum of my new refrigerator and sunlight slipping through blinds that still smelled of cardboard. I brewed coffee slowly, letting the house wake around me. No raised voices. No footsteps overhead. No careful tiptoeing around someone else's mood. Just quiet. It didn't feel like peace yet. But it felt like space, enough to grow into something better. I had barely taken my first sip when my phone buzzed. Another text. Short. Sharper. "Melissa. Sam, people are talking. I'd appreciate if you stopped feeding the gossip." I let out a slow breath. I hadn't spoken to anyone except my neighbor and my son. If rumors were spreading, they weren't coming from me. They were coming from her house. Her voice. Her guilt. I didn't answer. Silence was the only reply she couldn't reshape into something else. Around mid-morning, Brandon pulled into the driveway. His shoulders looked tighter than yesterday. Guilt tucked behind his eyes, tension in the lines of his face. He leaned in the doorway. "Dad. Mom's not letting this go." I expected as much. He rubbed the back of his head, searching for the right words. "I'm not trying to take sides," he said. She says you leaving makes her look bad. She says people are twisting it." I met his eyes. "She made herself look bad, Brandon. I just stopped protecting the illusion." He exhaled, long, tired, honest. After a moment he added, "Tyler's excited for Saturday. It's all he's talked about." That eased something inside me. "Tell him I'll be ready." Brandon nodded, lingering like he wanted to say more, then finally murmured, "See you soon." He wasn't an enemy. He wasn't a hero. He was a man learning what silence had cost. By afternoon, I stepped out to check the mailbox. A couple walking their dogs slowed. "Morning, Sam," the woman said kindly. Her husband nodded. "Heard you moved down here. Good for you." "Not what happened. Not we're sorry. Just, good for you. Support without prying." That's when I realized something important. Melissa no longer controlled the story. People were drawing their own conclusions. And they weren't choosing her version. Around sundown, my phone rang. A real call, not a text. "Grandpa?" His voice held a spark, small, bright, unbroken. "You're coming Saturday, right? I wouldn't miss it." "I found something," he said. "Something you gave me once. I didn't understand it then." "What is it?" A pause. Shy. Proud. "I'll show you. It's better in person." I smiled. A warmth filled the room, more than any lamp or furniture could. "All right," I said. "I'll be here." "Good." Then softer, almost conspiratorial. "Mom's been trying to spin the story again. People aren't believing her." "I know," I said. "Truth doesn't need defending. Lies do." He let out a breath, half laugh, half relief. "See you Saturday." "See you, kid." Later, I sat on the back porch as the sky dimmed from gold to blue. My wife's photo rested on the windowsill. Tyler's old baseball beside it. Two reminders. Of the life I lived. And the life I was choosing now. I could feel tension shifting in the air. Melissa's anger gathering like distant thunder. Brandon caught in the crosswind. Tyler searching for steady ground. But for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel trapped in anyone's storm. Just aware of its direction. And ready. Because sometimes leaving isn't the end of a battle. It's the beginning of winning one. By Friday morning, a thin mist hung over Riverside Lane, turning everything soft and silver. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, letting the quiet settle before the day brought whatever it intended. Peace never lasted long in my life. At 9:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. This time, her message wasn't polite. It wasn't disguised as concern. It was raw Melissa. "Melissa. Sam, this silence isn't helping anyone. Brandon and Tyler are confused. People think you left because you were offended. We should fix this before your choices embarrass the whole family." There it was. Accusation wrapped in responsibility. Control dressed as concern. I set the phone down. The more she tried to push, the more clearly I saw the pattern. And the less power it had. Around noon, a gentle knock tapped at my door. Mrs. Cole stood there holding a container of homemade soup. "I figured you might not have had a chance to shop," she said warmly. She stepped into the little living room, eyes scanning the clean, quiet space. "It's cozy," she said. "It suits you." People kept saying that. Maybe because, for the first time in a long while, it was true. She sat at the table, leaned closer, and lowered her voice. "I ran into Melissa at the market. She's telling people you overreacted. That she was helping you make a mature decision." I breathed slowly. "And do people believe her?" Mrs. Cole smirked. No one believes someone who tries that hard. She patted my hand before leaving. A small gesture, but it steadied me. Late afternoon, Brandon showed up unannounced. Shoulders tight, eyes tired, jaw working overtime. He didn't sit. He paced. "Dad. Mom's been blowing up my phone. Tyler's too. My sister's. She's spiraling. Because she's embarrassed?" I asked. He shook his head. "Because she lost control." He stopped pacing and finally looked at me, really looked. "She thinks you're planning to tell people things about her. Things that aren't true. A beat. Or, maybe that are true." There it was. The question he'd avoided for years. "Dad," he said quietly, "what else have we missed?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to. But because he wasn't ready for the truth he was circling. He left with that question hanging in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. At sunset, my phone buzzed again. A photo. A folded piece of paper on his desk. My handwriting on the front. His caption. "Found this in my old stuff. I'm bringing it tomorrow. You probably don't remember it. But I do." I remembered. A night years ago, when he was afraid of the dark. A note telling him he was braver than he knew. That fear wasn't weakness. That he wasn't alone. He had kept it. All this time. I held the phone for a moment longer than necessary. As night fell, I sat on the back porch listening to the steady hum of quiet. Across town, I imagined Melissa pacing, rehearsing, reaching for control she felt slipping through her fingers. Tomorrow's visit with Tyler wouldn't be simple. Not anymore. Not with Melissa's fear rising. Not with Brandon's doubts growing louder. Not with the truth about the past pressing against all of us. Fault lines had formed. And tomorrow? One of them would break. Saturday mornings usually came slow on Riverside Lane. This one didn't. I was already awake by 6, sitting on the edge of the quiet house with a cup of coffee cooling in my hands. The morning light came thin and pale through the blinds, but my thoughts were sharper than the sunlight. Tyler would be here at 10. He'd said he had something he wanted to show me. Something he found tucked away in his old things. Yesterday, when he stepped out of the car with Melissa, he clutched that folded paper like it mattered more than he could say. And today, I planned to find out why. But before Tyler could arrive, someone else did. A knock, not frantic, not aggressive. Just, hesitant. I already knew who it was. He stood on the porch in a jacket he hadn't bothered to zip, shoulders tight, eyes puffy, not from crying, but from a long night with little sleep. "Dad," he said quietly as I opened the door. "I need a minute before Tyler gets here." I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, letting his gaze move over the small living room like he was seeing something unfamiliar. Not the house. Me. "Mom's," he exhaled, searching for the right word. "Off. Worse than yesterday." "How?" I asked. "She's calm on the outside. Too calm." He rubbed his jaw. "That's how she gets when she's planning something." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Brandon reached into his pocket, then stopped, hesitating, weighing the moment. "That night you left," he said, "something kept bothering me. Something I couldn't shake." He shifted, looking almost embarrassed. "So I went through some of our old paperwork." He held out a folded sheet. His hand wasn't trembling. It was steady, like someone who had finally accepted a truth he'd avoided too long. I unfolded it. The basement repair transfer. 4 years ago. The one Melissa took credit for. Brandon's voice dropped. "She told me she handled that crisis. That she paid for everything herself. But when I found this, I remembered the date. I remembered the conversation we had that month. You told me not to worry." A pause. And I didn't. Because I assumed she'd taken care of it. He looked at the receipt like it was a map leading back 3 years he'd missed. I didn't go looking to catch her in a lie, he said. I went looking because I needed something to make sense. There it was. Guilt, clarity. And then resolve. I'm not saying all this to pick sides, he said quietly. I'm saying it because I don't want Tyler growing up blind to the truth. Like I was. I nodded. That was enough. No speeches. No dramatic forgiveness. Just understanding. Brandon pocketed the receipt again as a car turned onto the street. He stiffened. That's her. A blue car eased into my driveway. No slammed doors. No stomping steps. Melissa stepped out calmly, too calmly. Her eyes were alert, her expression crisp, her movements precise. This wasn't rage. This was calculation. Tyler climbed out on the other side, shoulders tense, one hand inside his hoodie pocket. Holding something. The note. Still folded. Still important. Melissa approached the door with the poise of someone entering a boardroom, not a confrontation. Sam, she said smoothly when I opened the door. May I come in? No, I replied. Tyler is welcome. You are not. Her smile thinned, but didn't break. That's unnecessary, she said evenly. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to correct a misunderstanding. Behind her, Tyler's jaw tightened. Mom, stop. She held up a finger, silencing him with a gesture she'd perfected. Sam, she continued, some people are spreading versions of last night that aren't accurate. I'd like to settle things privately. Brandon stepped into view. We're not doing this, he said. Melissa's eyes flicked to him, brief surprise, then calculation. Brandon, sweetheart, you're overwhelmed. This has all been spun out of context. Your father is. He interrupted her. Gently. Firmly. I found the basement transfer. Her composure faltered, just a flicker. That was years ago, she said quickly. You're misinterpreting. It was from Dad, he said. And you told me it came from your bonus. Her throat tightened. I protected us, she said. Someone had to. Tyler stepped toward me, hand still in his pocket, face steady. I want to stay, he said. I'm not going back with her. Tyler, Melissa reached for him. He stepped away, just one step, but enough to freeze the moment between all of us. Mom, he said, voice quiet but unwavering. You need to stop blaming everyone else. The words hit her harder than anything Brandon or I could have said. She stared at him, stunned, not by defiance, but by independence. Then she turned back to me. Her voice lowered, icy, careful. This won't stay like this, she said. People don't know the whole story. They will, I answered simply. No threat. No anger. Just truth. Melissa breathed in slowly, holding the air like she was swallowing something sharp. Then she turned and walked back to the car with a rigid, measured grace. The kind that hides fury behind dignity. She didn't slam the door. She didn't peel out. She left quietly. And that quiet was more dangerous than any outburst. When her car finally disappeared down the street, Tyler reached into his pocket and handed me the folded paper. I wanted you to have it today, he said. Not because of her, but because of us. I unfolded it. My handwriting. Years old. A message telling him he was strong. Brave. Loved. He swallowed. You wrote that when I had nightmares, he said. And I kept it. Because even when things were bad at home, you made me feel safe. For a moment, the entire house felt warmer. And heavier. Brandon stood behind him, eyes glassy but steady. Dad, he said quietly. Whatever happens next, we're not letting you go through it alone. I nodded. Not because I needed support. Because they needed to offer it. As we stepped inside, a car slowed at the corner. A neighbor. Watching. Lingering. Word was spreading. The shift was already happening. Melissa wasn't the only one losing control of her version. And for the first time in years. I wasn't the one shrinking in the shadows. The house felt different after Melissa left the driveway the day before. Not lighter. Just more awake, like every wall had finally exhaled. Tyler sat at the kitchen table now, tracing the edge of his folded note with his thumb. Brandon stood near the window, watching cars pass like he was trying to make sense of a world that had changed overnight. And I was making us breakfast, not because any of us were hungry. But because simple movements helped the room feel grounded again. We were 3 people in a small kitchen, each quieter than usual, but not afraid of the quiet. That alone was progress. Tyler broke the silence first. "Grandpa, she might come back, you know." He didn't sound scared. He sounded prepared. Brandon glanced at him, surprised by how steady his son's voice was. Then he looked at me. "I don't think she'll show up," Brandon said. "Not after yesterday." I didn't respond. Because I knew something Brandon didn't. Melissa never quits. She recalibrates. And right on cue. A soft thump hit the front door. Not a knock. Not a visitor. Something slipped through the mail slot. Brandon frowned. "I'll get it." He walked over, picked up a thick cream-colored envelope, and froze for half a second when he saw the name written across the front. Samuel Clayton. Typed, not handwritten. He turned it over. There was no return address. I wiped my hands and came closer. Even before opening it, I felt the temperature in the room drop a degree. Not fear, just recognition. Tyler leaned forward. "What is it?" Brandon handed it to me as if it were something breakable. "You should read it." I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single printed page. Not emotional. Not messy. Professional. Cold. I read it once silently, then again slower, feeling every line sharpen into clarity. It wasn't a threat, not in the dramatic sense. It was far more dangerous. A formal statement claiming I had created an unsafe emotional environment for Tyler and potentially influenced him to distance himself from his mother. Dated. Signed digitally. Worded in tight legal phrasing that sounded rehearsed. I set the paper down. Brandon's face drained of color. "Dad, what is that?" Tyler swallowed hard. "What does she mean, unsafe?" "You didn't do anything." I didn't speak for a moment. Because the truth was simple. Melissa had just shifted the battleground. No more gossip. No more whispers. She had introduced paperwork. A documented accusation. A suggestion that the family conflict was my responsibility. That was her strategy. Not a tantrum. Not a manipulation in the dark. A controlled, calculated attempt to scare me into silence. "This is how she operates," Brandon whispered, staring at the letter like it was a weapon. "When emotion doesn't work, she goes official." His eyes lifted, finally meeting mine. "She's building a case, isn't she?" "She thinks she is," I said calmly. Tyler's hands balled into fists. "This is a lie. If she sends that to anyone, Dad, we have to say something." Brandon exhaled shakily. "She's trying to make you look unstable, Dad. Or dangerous. Or." He looked at Tyler, struggling. "Like you're manipulating him." Tyler shot up from his chair. "Grandpa doesn't force anyone to do anything. She's just." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Tyler. Sit." He sat, not because he had to, but because the steadiness in my voice gave him a place to land. We sat there for a moment, the 3 of us around that small table, the same table that had felt safe minutes ago. Now it felt like the center of a battlefield we hadn't seen coming. Brandon finally spoke, quieter. I thought yesterday was the worst of it. I thought, once the truth came out, things would settle. I shook my head gently. Truth doesn't settle immediately, I said. It stirs before it settles. He looked at me with a realization that was both painful and clarifying. She's not done, he said. No, I answered. She's just begun. Tyler's jaw clenched. What do we do now? Before I could answer, there was another sound. A car pulling up. Slow. Deliberate. Stopping right in front of my walkway. All three of us turned toward the window. But it wasn't Melissa. It was someone else. A familiar sedan. A familiar face stepping out. Someone we didn't expect. Someone who never visited unannounced. Someone holding a matching cream-colored envelope in their hand. Brandon's breath hitched. Oh no. Tyler whispered. Is that Aunt Jensen? Yes. Melissa hadn't just sent a letter to me. She sent them to others. Including people who had no business being involved. The fallout had officially begun. And now. It was coming straight to our door. Aunt Jensen adjusted her purse strap, smoothed her blouse, and walked up my porch steps with a look that wasn't angry. Worse. She looked certain. Confident in a story she'd already chosen to believe. She raised her hand to knock. Tyler grabbed my sleeve. Grandpa, what's she going to say? I answered quietly, without moving from the chair. Whatever Melissa told her to. And the knock came. Solid. Final. The kind that changes the direction of a family. Aunt Jensen's knock wasn't loud. It was the kind of knock a person gives when they're not sure whether they're entering a home. Or a problem. I opened the door slowly. She stood there in a neatly pressed blouse, clutching her cream-colored envelope against her chest like a piece of evidence. Her expression wasn't angry. It was resolved. Sam, she said politely. I need to speak with you. Immediately. Brandon moved beside me instinctively, a quiet barrier. Aunt Jensen, he said, voice steady but strained. This isn't a good time. She didn't even look at him. It's exactly the time, she replied. She stepped in without waiting to be invited. A family trait, apparently. Tyler stiffened at the table, but he didn't shrink. He watched. Waiting. Jensen opened her envelope with sharp, practiced fingers. I received a very troubling letter from Melissa, she began. It claims that Sam may be influencing Tyler in ways that affect his emotional stability. She lifted her eyes to me, searching for guilt that wasn't there. And before this becomes a larger family concern, I want clarity. Her voice was calm. Measured. But her hands gripped the paper too tightly. That was her crack. Brandon noticed it before I did. Aunt Jensen, he said carefully, Mom's letter leaves out a lot. She raised a hand. Brandon, sweetheart, I know you feel caught in the middle. I'm not caught, he said quietly. I'm choosing where I stand. She hesitated, just a fraction, surprised by the interruption. Good. Friction. Jensen turned back to me. Sam, she said, before I take this further. I need to ask a direct question. Her tone changed. Slower, more deliberate. Have you said anything to Tyler that could be interpreted as turning him against his mother? Even unintentionally. The question hung in the air. A trick question. A trap wrapped in courtesy. And the tension tightened. Tyler leaned forward, ready to jump in. I placed a light hand on his shoulder. It's all right, I murmured. Then I answered Jensen directly. No. And more importantly, I didn't need to. Her brows knit. That wasn't the answer she expected. Good. Her certainty faltered. Jensen inhaled and straightened, regaining composure. Melissa only reached out because she feels cornered, she said. She told me you stormed out of the house. Left without speaking. And that Tyler has been distant ever since. Tyler almost laughed, not from humor, but disbelief. That's not what happened, he said. She's lying. Tyler, Jensen said gently, your mother's been under enormous strain. And that's not my fault, he cut in, voice trembling with contained anger. Or Grandpa's. His chest rose sharply as if he finally stopped holding something in. I walked to him because I wanted to. She tried to pull me back to the car today. She wouldn't even listen. Jensen pressed her lips together, an involuntary twitch. The second crack. She couldn't hide it. Before Jensen could respond, Brandon stepped closer. Not with anger. With resolve that had taken hours, years, to form. His gaze dropped to the letter in her hands. He studied it like it was the last link in a chain he'd been trying to break. He exhaled slowly. Almost painfully. Then. Aunt Jensen, he said, I know you care about my mom. I know you want to protect her. He paused. Just one beat. His chest rose. The internal shift you wanted. A choice being made. But the truth is, she hasn't been protecting us for a long time. That landed. Jensen's eyes widened, not offended, not defensive. Just, exposed. For the first time in months. I felt my breath settle in my chest instead of scraping at the edges. Not triumph. Not relief. Just, steadiness. A feeling I had forgotten. A reminder that truth doesn't need volume. Only consistency. Tyler reached into his backpack and pulled out something none of us expected. A second envelope. Brandon blinked. What's that? Tyler swallowed. I found it in Mom's desk, he said. I didn't know what to do with it. He handed it to Jensen. She opened it slowly. Her face shifted. Confusion shocked disbelief. Inside was a draft of the same letter Melissa had sent us. But with notes scribbled in the margins. How to phrase this? Make him sound unstable. Ask Jensen to reinforce. B. Don't let him see this. Every line was a quiet admission. A fear. A strategy. A manipulation written in real ink. Jensen's hands shook. Just once. The biggest crack yet. She folded the papers and set them down with shaking breath. I didn't know, she whispered. She didn't tell me any of this. Brandon rested a hand on her shoulder. The first soft gesture in the entire room. It's not your fault, he said. She uses everyone she loves to hold everything together. Tyler nudged closer to me, almost instinctively. Jensen looked at the three of us. Really looked. And something in her moved. I think, she said quietly, I need to talk to her, not to defend her. To understand her. And for the first time in years, she sounded like herself. Not Melissa's echo. Jensen left slowly, her heels muted against the walkway, envelope pressed to her side. Brandon walked her out, speaking in a low voice. I couldn't hear the words. Just the tone. Tyler sat beside me, leaning his head lightly against my arm. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. The house was quiet. Not with tension. But with a kind of healing silence. As Brandon came back inside, he closed the door gently. The click echoed. Not final. Just right. Tyler slid the note I wrote him years ago back into my pocket. You keep that, Grandpa, he said softly. You're going to need it. When Mom realizes she can't control all of us anymore. I looked at him. And this time, truly. My breath didn't shake.